Welcome, everybody. I want to welcome Beth Richards. We're really happy to have Beth with us today. She's an amazing business lady of an independent label called Beth Richards, and she'll walk you through kind of how she got to where she is, talking about all of her experiences along the way, and we'll be open for any questions at the end. So on to you, Beth.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much, Heather, for organizing this, and thanks again for having me. Okay, so for all of you that don't know me, my name is Beth Richards. I have a brand called Beth Richards, and what I make is modern swimwear. Just want to go through sort of my background and how I started and my fashion journey and what sort of led me to starting my own brand. But just like you, I graduated from fashion school and bright-eyed and was, eager to get out there and start work, which I did. I actually worked for quite a few brands across Canada for over 12 years before starting my own brand. And I have to say that was definitely the best decision for me at the time. There's a saying about sort of making mistakes with other people's money, and it definitely rings true. Although, when it happens to you, it's a little bit different. But certainly it was a great way for me to, be able to learn and understand, sort of the whole process before starting out on my own. So the image I just have up here is one of our signature styles called the Inez, just so that you guys can get a feel for the brand and, sort of what it's about. I'll explain some of that in a little bit, but there's sort of an opener to what Beth Richards is. Everything's Italian fabric. It's all made in Canada because the sustainability piece was really important to me. Just, one little sort of aside is that the brand is sort of rooted, in feminism, or how, I sort of feel about women. And it didn't feel that I could be selling a product to women if it wasn't ethically made from sort of beginning to end. I feel a lot of, especially offshore manufacturing, is, putting women at risk, especially, and, usually being made, at the expense of another, usually a woman, or her, taking her away from her children with long hours. So it was just really important that we were, doing that as sort of the first step of, being able to honor and appreciate women with the brand. So my bio, I'm just going to read some of this stuff, and then I'll stop and, talk about some of the, details with it. So I was born in Toronto. I studied fashion at a school no longer here called the Academy of Design. After several years working in various positions, I did actually work quite a bit in technical design, as well as in production, is really sort of where I got my start. Even though I'd graduated in fashion design, that's sort of where I started. I'd been offered a job at a high street retailer called Aritzia out in Vancouver. And that's what sort of brought me out there. And the move inspired the launch of my brand. I didn't really realize there were beaches and, that there was just this whole underserviced industry. And it really, sort of selfishly looking for something for myself, started my journey in, making things for others. So, some sort of mantra we have is, this is not just a swimsuit. It's an opportunity to change the way women feel about swimwear. I still really believe that. When I started, even though it's 10 years ago, it's hard to believe so much has changed in that, sort of somewhat short period of time. At the time, it was very youth driven, very sort of bikini. There were not a lot of options. And again, the idea was born out of me looking for something for myself. So just really wanting to sort of service that woman. So hopefully synonymous with the highest standards of design and quality, I wanted to challenge the world's idea of beauty and improve confidence and empowerment one piece at a time. So this was way earlier than, even seeing any sort of positive body movement. There just really wasn't that. I had actually presented in a early appointment, an unretouched image of a model, and you could see some cellulite, and the buyer was quite off put by it. And to be perfectly honest, I didn't really even notice it or think of it as being something. And she said, well, I guess that's sort of what I would look like in a suit. And that seemed very obvious to me that that's something you would want to do. But it just goes to show how, it was sort of such an untrained eye, and, how she just, had that sort of strong reaction because she was so used to seeing sort of New York standard, very, very thin model types, in swim, that it felt incredibly different to her to see at the time. So since the brand's launch in 2012, it's grown a following around the world with distribution at some of the most prestigious fashion retailers. Early on, the sophisticated and street aesthetic have challenged the swimwear market, offering with women interesting and versatile options in a youth-driven and otherwise underserved commodity. So even when I started, the types of styles were very different than what you see now. It was very, tankini, bikini, and maybe a one piece. There really weren't, a lot of options. When I first started, I went to do, research, and the only, one piece swimsuit I could find at Holt Renfrew at the time, which is like a Selfridges, was a Burberry plaid one piece, in their signature check. And, that was obviously not something that spoke to me. So, just really looking for options outside of that. So this is an image from my debut collection. Definitely got some attention. Capsule is a trade show in New York where we first showed, and I was the first swimwear brand to even show there, so much so that everyone was a little bit confused because they're mostly ready to wear buyers. And they were like, what is this? Is it body wear, bodysuits? What's happening here? So I had to actually even change the name on the little card to say Beth Richards Swimwear so that people, would know going in. But we got no sales from that first, oh, sorry, let's Heather. No sales from that first launch. But the women coming in were definitely, early adopters, and the women I could sort of see in the brand, and they were really into it and were just like, this is beautiful. This is great. So I really knew that, I was on to something. I shouldn't say nothing happened, because shortly thereafter, we actually did get a very, very, very lucky lead from Net-a-Porter, and actually helped us launch the collection there about 6 to 8 months down the road. So that took a little bit of working on, but I'll sort of touch on that one later. But this is called the Bardot. And, I sort of touch on this a little bit, but even details with mesh, some of these fabrics, I felt like had been forgotten about since the 80s. And, just bringing back, some of these just types of fabrications and mixing it up. And of course, everything's always very vintage inspired. I have been thrifting my whole life. So pulling different details, I grew up sort of in the 90s. That was my era. So I'm, you definitely see its influence in a lot of my aesthetic. So after 12 years of working for others, I saw an opportunity and decided to take the plunge. Earlier on, I just sort of touched on working for others and, just a positive impact that had on me to just, learn, make mistakes, really get your footing and figure things out. I worked full time for 2 years while starting up. Thankfully, I had a fairly flexible design job, but sometimes I look back and think, like, how did I do that? Like, that was nuts. I had a little bit more energy at the time, but I would get up at around 6 a.m., do emails, specs, whatever. My job at the time didn't start until 10. I worked 10 to 6. And then, at lunch breaks or whatever, again, hop on emails, run out, maybe do errands if I had to, and then, do whatever I could at night and repeat. I needed the source of income. It wasn't sustainable to go out on my own. It was just, trying to scrape together as much as we could in terms of orders. To give you an idea, that original Net-a-Porter order, my first big one that I got, was for about $30,000. And half of that was half of that was net 30. The other half was on an SOR term, which is basically consignment. So, to do that, I needed to also, pay upfront for my manufacturer, pay upfront for my raw materials. And, so for me, it was quite a big investment. We started about, around with about $10,000 is what I had sort of for seed money. And we just used, some money that we had through my husband's home. Usually it's for, repairs and things. So was very glad we didn't really actually need it. And it was sort of dedicated to swim at the time. But I had that money, but it was, a huge challenge to be able to, fulfill this order and make sure that, we did it the right way. But had I not sort of had the experience of going through the whole fashion cycle, going through the whole production cycle prior, I probably would not have been able to pull it off. So it's just, I constantly lament on that. I urge all to understand most aspects of the production cycle before starting a brand. I really, can't stress that enough. I first started at a headwear company. We used to make knit hats. And so, I've been working now for about 20 years. So again, this was a very early on in offshore manufacturing. It's hard to believe there was a time when China was not the go-to for a lot of the products that we see and we have and we wear. It was a domestic factory in Toronto and North York where we had old knitting machines, smaller sort of like stole machines and, chunky machines. And a lot of these, were all like knit and constructed here in Ontario. So early on, just understanding then the domestic sort of production flow and then slowly transitioning into an offshore workflow, which are a little bit different for sure when you have to factor in, shipping time and just, the amount of time going back and forth, there's some language barriers and travel and so on. So being a great designer is similar to being a film director. You need an understanding of all the components that go into making a product. Making something and getting it to market is one thing. Building a business is very different. There's a couple of two things sort of in there, but you think of Steven Spielberg, he's an incredible director, but he has a very, at least a basic understanding of lighting, sound, wardrobe, and just being able to pull that sort of whole idea and vision together. You need to be able to communicate with all of the teams. And early on, you don't really have a team, it's you. So, also being able to manage a lot of things on your own. And, if I didn't sort of have that foundation, it would be very difficult for me to move forward and to be able to troubleshoot when, problems come up, because, they do present themselves and funny things happen all the time. It's kind of crazy. So I just wanted to discuss and highlight sort of the product design cycle. Again, it's a little bit different depending on whether or not you're starting something, from ideation, from a full concept, or if you've got a design that's coming, or that's being built on something else. So certainly, there's a little give and take in terms of this 1 to 3 months. And again, if you've got an incredible manufacturer that really knows what they're doing, great pattern maker, or if you're making the patterns, certainly, that can shorten this lead time, if you will. So always best to do research. I pull a lot of reference images together, and as I get ideas, and usually collect them all before I go into sort of a design season, or like I usually spend about a week putting a collection together. So the first is the concept and research. Second is design. So when I would go into my design week, what I would do is then pull all of that information, pull all of that reference, and really see what, if I'm still interested or still feeling those things, and all the things that I start to pull together and create a story. From that story, we would put together a spec or a pattern. Again, this process varies quite a bit depending on, where you're making it, how you're making it. Do you have to make your fabric? Talking about knits previously. So, I do work quite a bit. And so swim is 4-way stretch. It is knitwear. However, we're still buying it from a supplier and then having it sort of cut and made. So the process is a little bit different. But say you are making cut and sew sweaters, you're actually doing jacquards. You're having to make the fabric before even constructing it. So you put your spec or your pattern together. Again, making things domestically is a little bit easier. You can have, usually my specs are about a couple pages, and I could actually maybe show you one further down, but they're pretty basic because, again, we've got that foundation already. We have base bodies that we're already working with. So it's really just about, the new details, any new fabrics, and design lines, and sort of flushing those things out. Once we have, a collection and our specs ready, we send them off to the manufacturer and we get our samples made. Usually things are made in like a muslin. So for me, that's black 4-way stretch, because we know that black is always anchored in the collection, and, have things made up. And a lot of times it's the most simplest of designs that ends up, being the head scratcher. Traditionally, I have a bit of a rule that we don't go beyond 2 samples in anything. That varies for everyone. I've worked for different companies that, go. And if you feel really strongly about something and it's just not working and it needs more work, by all means, you can go to a 4th sample if you feel that strongly about it. But going back to the sustainability piece and the financial piece, it just gets to a point where, you have to decide, is this style worth the effort and the money of continuing to develop it, or is it just not going to work and we need to just keep it moving with the things that are? As we're developing, time is passing, and you have, hard deadlines that you need to make when it comes to, because I'm not a direct to consumer brand, I work on a fashion calendar of, being in market. We have to present, I'm with a showroom in New York and in Paris, we have to hit these deadlines so that we can be, in the showroom for sales when, appointments start. So I'll go down and we can look at some of the timelines after, but, we're always working towards that date. So, sometimes making, again, a finite amount of samples is not, going to work, because we really do need to hit sort of that salesman sample stage. So after we have our fitting, this is an incredibly important part. So we started actually having our fittings at the factory, which worked out best because we were able to just took out that extra layer of having to communicate what was maybe not working and what my vision was. That was a real luxury to be able to do in Vancouver, where our fit model was there. And it's the same girl that we were shooting on our e-com. So, the goods were literally made for her. And we were able to fit and just go over all of the details and what we were looking for and pin it out right on her at the factory and get those sort of comments and everything, sort of finalized there. If we need another sample, great. Sometimes we go right into salesman sample production. If it's a minor tweak and you don't think it's really going to, require another fit sample, then, we'll just make the change and it'll go into salesman sample. At that point, salesman sample set is made. So talking about the showroom, we usually get one sample set made for sales, and everything, would be sort of produced. It's almost, just like a small capsule, and in our colors where we can. So simultaneously as this development process is happening, we've ordered our raw materials and some sample yardage and any new fabrics or colors that we're wanting to see. We've had fabric printed and ready to go, so that when we put in our salesman sample order, we are we're good to go. There's no further delays. So merchandising and line sheets, I've got a couple to show you here. This is a really important piece. So this is how I build my collections for the most part. So this is really where, to me, everything sort of comes together in terms of, the mood of the season. And it's also, the sales tool that everyone uses, to be able to understand and then merchandise the collection. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in terms of planning, but you'll see sort of all the details are here, pricing, but you get an idea of what is, what the sort of the story is. This collection, again, we'll speak to, has a lot of clear details, lucite details, but it also sort of pulls back to existing carryover styles that we already had in the collection. So the previous season, we had, had this scrunchy group where it's a scrunchy, sort of scrunched straps, and has like sort of a capsule within a capsule. So everything I do, I usually do try and make sure that it can work with existing styles and existing colors so that it's not going to, when it's on a rack in a store, it's not going to look completely foreign. You also want to make sure that, everything's not just black, that we have some interest there, so that new buyers or, some stores are, doing all 3 seasons, that they've got something new in the offering to be able to provide their customers. Bottoms are, very important, obviously, to what we do. And they change from season to season. However, there are usually some core styles that remain the same, like the Heather, the Naomi, who's been in the collection since we started. But then there are, sort of new additions like the thong. And this really goes back to my customer and what she needs and wants. We added a bike short. We had this rash guard in the season or in the collection years prior, and it did quite well. It can be worn sort of as a fashion top. Bike shorts were performing incredibly well too. And it's always kind of, nice to be able to wear with your swim top to change it up a little bit. And then also, versatile to go back into your wardrobe. As we've evolved over the seasons, we do have a little bit of resort wear and, just some cover up items that, we've used in our mesh that sort of work back to the original story. But this is a line sheet, and this is traditionally, again, what I use to build a collection. And then, it's sort of that one-stop shop because it's what you're going to present to your merchandisers and to your buyers who are, essentially going to be purchasing a collection. So those are the line sheets. Once the line is, finalized and flushed out, we will go and do a photo shoot. Also in this collection, I'll show you the lookbook for this, that one that we were just sort of looking at. So, now you're sort of starting to see too how the bills can mount, which why working for myself or working for someone else the first 2 years was sort of essential. But yeah, doing a shoot, you just need to have, a presentation that looks professional, to be able to show your buyers, so that they can get a feeling for the collection and what you're trying to evoke. So, we'll talk a little bit about the design inspiration here, but I was really into clear and lucite. So this amazing jewelry designer from Chicago actually made these amazing collars. So Brown's actually, had this style. So the suit just, it goes right around the collar, and there's an opening in the back. It's actually really quite beautiful. I had sourced these elastics from France. And just we'll talk about some of the testing that needed to go through to make sure that those, would work. This is one of our prints. So this fabric is what's called sublimated. It's a sublimation print. I believe it's sort of like a heat transfer in a sense, where it goes through like a roller and, sublimated onto a white fabric. So wherever you see a lot of my prints, it's actually white fabric on the back. So all of these prints, this is a mesh print, which I love doing the mesh prints. They're so nice. So this is that scrunchy detail I was talking about with one of our, sort of graphic floral prints. And then just sort of keeping what I sort of, consider sort of signature details of the collection with the mesh, and sort of always anchoring everything we do with black. This is the Hutton. It's my favorite of the season. You'll see me wearing this summer for sure. You can always wear this with pants or with a skirt, jean shorts. So I always wanted to have a level of versatility in all the things I make. Certainly am not, unaware of the fact that the suits are expensive. So, I really wanted to give the wearer some options, for making what is potentially a larger investment for her for swimwear. This is the Kim set. This is a very, very popular set. It has a branded elastic on it. It's very flattering on most. It also provides a lot of support, which women need. But it's sort of a high leg, high waist, and it really hits you at, what I consider the most flattering places. We sort of styled this collection, in a way that you could see it outside of swim and, wear it outside of swim. Certainly, made for the beach, but, you're ready for kind of anything. This is that printed mesh we talked about, and we had the dot previously in the season. So again, just trying to continue some of those details so that it remains relevant as we go. This was sort of inspired by a Halston dress, very Studio 54. So it's actually called the 54 dress. It's really just a piece of elastic, but I love, I just love how easy it is, and I love asymmetrical, sort of off the shoulder. This is a knot top. This is a signature style. Maybe I'm sure you've seen it a lot out there, but I would like to say that this was us that definitely, did it first. Certainly, I think we launched the knot top probably 6 years ago by now, but it became one of our sort of hero styles, and a style that became, very sort of synonymous with us in a lot of ways. So we have it in a lot of colors. Certainly it's downtrended, as, it's been appropriated by everyone, but, it's just a great, fun top, and actually very supportive for, large or small breasts. And just something we like to live by here: objects and mirrors are more beautiful than they appear. Our vulnerability is strength, and our imperfections perfect. It's not just a swimsuit, it's an opportunity to change the way women feel about swimwear. Still to this day, a lot of customers come into a fitting and, are horrified. They think it's worse than jean shopping. And, they're just not ready, and, a lot of body dysmorphia and all the things. So the whole goal was to just really ease that pain and for, women to feel amazing when they leave a fitting. And, I think that we've been able to do that. I'm really thankful for that. And, just watching a transformation in front of your mirror of someone who is really not loving what they see, and then, leaving really excited to be able to show their friends and family, and just loving, feeling comfortable, being able to run around on the beach and not, have things fall out, and to just feel really great in a next to skin garment. So that is a lookbook. So that was our photo shoot and where we're sort of at there. But that's sort of, the level that if you want to be, sort of in a higher end store, what it should look like if you're going to present sort of on that level. So I'd mentioned that, we were in a showroom in New York. We've got sales and buying appointments. So generally, like a Browns will come in, they want to see all the new things. We put a rack together, and, if you had a previous season's order, you might put the order out there so that you can understand where you're at and where you're going. Again, we'll talk about this when I design and my process, but it's very much rooted back in sales. So if something doesn't perform well, then certainly, we're not going to continue sort of moving in that direction. Am I supposed to be looking at, hold on, okay, good. I'm sorry, I was not really looking at the chat here. So I was just like, am I supposed to look at that? I'm not entirely. Okay, here we go. We're back. Okay, so hopefully, you've had a great, sales season. You put all those orders together, and then you would go into production. So certainly, when you go into production, you tally up all those orders. If someone's ordered ones of something and no one else has, unfortunately, it's likely going to be canceled, that item. So, there's a level of juggling current inventory, new inventory, and then our online channels. So, you put everything together, see where we're at, what we've got, and just really sort of start to manage the levels. And this is when it can be, a little bit tricky, and it just, really have to look at those spreadsheets and make sure that you've got everything. And, you're also taking on the role of a planner or, an allocations person. So, what do we think this style is going to do next season? The Kims, are really popular. So we should probably pad our numbers, so that we make sure that we're not out of stock. Being low in inventory can actually be really hard on, your cash flow, because if you, it's supply and demand. If you, sell out of something, like, oh my goodness, you're losing all those potential sales. So you want to make sure that you always sort of have a nice level of inventory, not too much, not too little. So it's a fine line. Okay. So, production, again, once those styles are calculated, you would go into your consumptions, figure out what you need of everything, how much fabric you need, what you've got also in inventory on hand. All of your styles get graded that need to be graded. You do all your raw material purchasing. All those things are sort of happening in tandem, so that, again, you're managing and maintaining these timelines, because once those orders are placed, you have finite ship windows. So there's a ship window and a cancel window. You can't ship outside of cancel. I mean, you can, but you're putting yourself at risk for potential cancellation or for a heavy discount. So it's really important that once you get a PO, that you stick to it, and that you make sure everything is on time. So production schedule, maintain tagged and bagged inventory. So our factory actually does the tagging and bagging early on. We used to be able to manage that here, have stuff at my house, and we would just, tag and bag everything and start putting them in boxes for, retailers. As things scale up, that becomes unsustainable to be able to manage. So they do everything. So once it goes to our logistics place, which is where we ship everything in our warehouse, the goods come in completely done, completely finished product in a bag, hygiene stickers, everything's on it. It's at that point that all the orders start to get picked and packed. Again, they're all prioritized based on, ship dates, or even where they are logistically in the world. And that whole process sort of goes from there. I have someone who helps me in operations and logistics. She would then, go through all the manuals and make sure that we're following, all of the specifics in terms of shipping goods out. And then, gets to the store. So marketing, styles added to the website, marketing, PR push. We don't work with a traditional PR company, but you would do, potential ad buys, influencer marketing. So I would say the overall product cycle is 6 months to a year. We design and develop for resort. And then that is sort of the longest cycle all the way. We sell it the whole way through to the following resort. So you'll see when sales are in June, that's when, we're at the showroom, and then when it sort of ships. I realize I've been talking a while, so I should probably move a bit faster for you. I'm sorry. Our signature knock top, I had talked about a little bit. So design process, which is probably what you're more interested in. So again, I collect a lot of those, clippings, references, like I love Tom Ford Gucci era. I will, look at sort of strap details and things, and, put in all of these, this huge melting pot, all the existing styles, and really start, to create a vision for myself. As I mentioned, it's very much in sync with sales. So if I love something, but it's just not selling, if I still believe that it will, maybe we're just too early with something and it still has value, certainly it can stay. But if something is really, hit the floor hard, it's not a detail or something I'm maybe going to build on. So again, I just did talk about like black beans for the anchor, mesh being a signature as well. We've used layers of mesh, different types of mesh. Again, when I design, I want the silhouette to be the thing that sort of comes through first and foremost. So, when I sourced this fabric strap, we had to do quite a few different types of, we had a few different types of straps, and we had to do quite a few different stress tests to make sure that, the way we stitched it, it wasn't going to just perforate and completely rip off when someone's wearing it. I did make the decision to only have this in one season because it just felt like, as we went, it could be a potential liability. So you just don't want to have that worry of something not performing. Again, you've worked so hard to get someone to potentially buy or try on one of your suits, only for it to fail at that point, just is not what we're wanting. But the Ghost collection, very much, all of these details clear and sort of seeing that detail through. Sort of mentioned the Hutton being my favorite. Again, the mesh details, a plunging front, and then the Saint Tropez with this lucite collar. So, again, going back to buyer feedback and, having the black, but also, creating colors and, just colors and prints, things that we can build on, because, I wish I could just sell black, and it's usually the thing I sell the most of. However, I have a lot of customers that love this suit and have actually bought multiple colors because they just want different options and love how it fits. So I can't stress how fit is incredibly important, especially when it comes to swimwear. I see my share of saggy butts out there on the beach. I want to be able to help everyone where I can. But certainly there's new trends too with a lot of this, very form fitting and, the suits, almost, curl into the body. That's not necessarily like our vibe. We definitely want them to fit and sort of stay in place. So even the elastic we use is a very sturdy rubber elastic from Italy called Filpar. When we fit, again, we want the wearer to feel comfortable and like everything is going to stay where it should. So, just talking about fit, it took us 4 years to perfect a lot of our fits, just trying on different people. When you change one detail in something, you raise a hem, lower a hem, it completely changes the fit in a 4-way stretch. So really taking those things into consideration and just, perfecting, when we first started, our crotches were really wide, and it just, really needing to make sure that everything was cut and hitting the body in the right way. They seem like really obvious things, but sometimes something's missed and then it just carries over until someone sort of catches it or you just really see it one day. When looking at supply chains, returns, ill fits can become a huge liability. Again, these things are carried on to the customer. If they don't perform well, or if a retailer is getting a bunch of, returns for poor fit, ultimately that will come back to haunt you for sure. Feedback is a really important part of this job. It's very personal. My brand is my name, and it can be very difficult, but you have to really understand that it's, for the best. And you're learning what everyone's just trying to move you in the right direction, a positive direction. So it's really important to take what the buyers say. They're not always right, that's for certain, but usually they're providing feedback so that it can be constructive and used, to help. Some colors require color fast tests. We did this crazy neon color, actually. It was like a pink color with some red in it. And the fabric supplier was telling me that, with that particular color, some of it sits on the top of the rubber spandex fiber. Like it just rests on top. So over time, it will, just sort of fall off. Certainly you couldn't wash this item with white. It would definitely transfer. So sometimes you learn these things ahead of schedule. Sometimes you don't. In that case, the product had been done. We didn't really realize what big of an issue the color fastness was until we'd already, produced garments. So in this case, we had hang tags on it that, just warned the customer saying, get all of our customers to do anyway. But certainly it's always good to be aware of, what would happen to a garment if they didn't follow those instructions, just so you have sort of the worst case scenario and know how to maneuver around it. So wear tests are always the best way to improve products and a great excuse to go on vacation. I would say so for sure. I wear a lot of the products, of course. And, just always, brings me back into the customer's shoes, why I'm sort of doing this and how I feel. And I can really, detect anything that might be an issue as we go. I wore the clear straps actually on a past trip, and I didn't realize how much I was going to love that suit. Actually, it was just really versatile. This is the Gina. She was introduced a couple seasons ago. You can actually remove these straps if you like and make it a 2-piece. Some people are worried about tanning. We're not really into tanning. I definitely believe in safe sunning. But love this suit. It's got like a high waist. Obviously, it looks beautiful on Olivia. What can't she wear? But that's sort of, where I'm at, where I've been, and certainly, open for questions. Let's see if I've got anything else. This is...
Hey, hi.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say thanks, Beth. That was amazing. It's really a really great opportunity for the students to see the whole production cycle and process. It's something that we don't cover a lot within the fashion programs, because a lot of the focus is just on design, and there's a whole other evolution beyond. We do run some business courses, and so the students are starting to learn some of this, but they aren't as experienced as you. So really great to hear all of that, and thank you. I just want to open up the floor to any questions. If you do have a question, please feel free to pop it into the chat box and we can answer it. I don't have any questions on the poll that went around. If you're on the screen, you can also just turn your mic off and turn your mic on and just say, hey, if you have a question. And so we'll probably, if there aren't any questions within the next couple of minutes, we'll maybe just give Beth a moment to wrap up, and then we'll go from there. Okay. Don't think there's going to be any questions here, Beth. We've got a bunch of shy ones.
Yeah,
so I have a question.
Yeah.
So you were saying that you manufacture your goods in Canada, and you're based in Canada. How has this, well, you talked about the influence and why you chose to do that, but how has that affected your production cycle and sales cycle by actually manufacturing in Canada?
Yeah, it certainly has affected all those things. I mean, there are definitely some wins of being close to the product and being able to, design and develop easily or easier because, your factory is right there. But it has definitely posed challenges when it comes to the design side. We are so limited in what we can do when it comes to machinery, a lot of, like laser cutting and things like that. We do not have the capability of doing here. So, you see a lot of my designs are quite minimal and simple, and that's absolutely a byproduct of having things made here. Again, there are certain limitations, and, you could do something with all kinds of wild and crazy themes, but, your cost starts to significantly increase. Our first season, we had Balsonet cups, which are, more traditional sort of bustier type cups. But having the wiring, the padding, and all of the paneling just really increased our cost to a point where, we didn't want to be in the $300 range for a suit. It's just not sustainable. So things like, the knot top, were really incredible because they allowed us, to have a really efficient price and then be able to, churn them out and, sort of have this cool, what we think cool style that was, sort of worked for everyone.
Okay, great. Thank you. Have you ever considered not manufacturing in Canada, and have you looked at factories elsewhere?
I was on a trip to Bali and I thought I should do diligence while I'm there. So I did actually look at a couple factories there. I just can't, and I think like in the news, like after that, like there had been something about them, like, caning homosexuals. It's like the human rights abuses, I just, can't get around. And, it was just like, no, it's a core value and it needs to remain a core value. It's not just, the environment. It's very much to me, a human factor. And it's interesting that, everyone talks about sustainability and they just think that it's, about fabric, and, but it's really not. To me, the humanity is the bigger picture. And just the way we're treating
it's like the ethics. behind it all. And I think like we talk a lot about social justice aspects at Plymouth College of Art, and it's all of that stuff that becomes almost more important than like a recycled or organic fabric at the end of the day. And working with local factories and local people, you get to keep your eyes on everything. So it's pretty amazing that you're able to do that.
Totally.
There are a few questions that have popped up.
I see that.
I'll read them.
Yeah. So yes, we do work with some recycled polyester fabric. We use a Conoline. Am I saying that right? Oh my gosh. We need a fabric actually, and it's made from polyester from bottles. Absolutely. It was difficult to reach as no, again, all of our fabric comes from Italy for the most part. So yeah, we're able to be as, it's definitely becoming less of a challenge, which is really great because a lot of our suppliers are now understanding that sustainability is very important to, consumers. So they are getting on board. But I have to say early on, there were not as many options as there are now. So I definitely think this is a really great thing. As textile practice student, it's interesting. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so I think she's just saying thank you. Nick also thanks. That's really nice for you to say. There's another question that's popped in from Yanni. How did you get your brand? What platforms did you use? What networking? Did you know people beforehand, or how did you reach out to them? How did you get noticed, Beth?
Yeah, so I showed at a trade show called Capsule in New York. That was really sort of how I started. Certainly, I had a few friends that definitely, helped do a PR push. I don't know if Adele is going to talk to you, but Adele was very helpful.
Adele is going to. Yeah.
Cute. Okay. Yeah. So Adele was really helpful early on for sure. She was doing PR for Dace at the time, so she just helped, troubleshoot, questions that I might have, but also, was able to send, my collection out to contacts. It is definitely changing. There's a lot of online platforms in terms of showroom. I feel like there's an element of luck in launching any kind of brand. And I do feel like I did have, some stars definitely aligned for me, but Capsule, which also, they show in Paris, so New York and Paris, is a great way to be able to get out there. There's all kinds of different new trade shows now, but trade shows are still great to be able to, connect with industry people as well as, buyers. What that's going to look like from here on in. I definitely feel like it'll maybe go back to that, but we got the showroom a couple years in, but we weren't able to do that until we had sort of some bigger retailers. So yeah, Capsule, I can't say enough good things, but again, trade shows sort of change all the time.
Yeah, but also, Beth, I have to say that your promotional material, your lookbooks, your photography is all super slick, and it's going to get noticed because of that. And the designs that you use do look very wearable, and like I can just tell like how it was the right time for you to be launching your brand, and I'm really exciting to hear that it came up from there. So
I want to just share with you. I do, just having said that, I just want to share with you really quickly, only because I didn't have any samples. I had no photo shoot and I had no money really. We only had very first samples, so nothing fit. They look like they're children's suits. But we had to submit something to Capsule to be able to even be included. So this is like a book that I Photoshopped my brand name onto. Sorry?
Yeah. This is 2012?
This is the first one. So again, no, we didn't have any collateral or anything, but we just sort of made this. This is Coralie, I'm not sure if you know, but we just, in my bathroom, took photos of the samples that we had. and tried to make it work because, again, we had nothing. None of these really fit. They weren't constructed properly, but what were the creative ways that we could illustrate what we were doing, get in this trade show, and just sort of figure it out, as we go. So thankfully, this got us a spot in there. And it's kind of funny to think that in 2012, like a lot of the styles still being relevant to today, but that was it. That's kind of all we had. And, we just hope for the best. And we kind of lucked out.
Yeah, so I would also kind of add in that I think with your background knowledge of working in industry prior to coming in to start your brand, you kind of knew what you might need. You knew all of the stages and the steps, and I think that it's really helpful. It has been really helpful for you, and was really helpful at that 2012 point. You knew that you needed great imagery. You knew you needed great product. You knew all of this already, and so it's just a little hint to all the students, like, get out in industry and take whatever job you can get, because you'll learn something there. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Totally.
So there's another question from Millie. How do you feel sustainability impacts your business? I can elaborate a little better with a mic on. Millie, please feel free to turn a mic on if you can.
Hi.
Oh, hi.
Hi. I'm an I graduated last year, but Heather kindly invited me to the talk. I just wanted to say, like, from being a sustainable designer, do you feel that limits you at all in terms of that being like, okay, we're not going to release as many collections this year because we want to consider our impact, or we're not going to go in that direction because that might not adhere to being sustainable? So do you feel that it can limit you at all?
Yeah, I do. I think it can, and certainly, from the design aspect, mostly, we can't always do everything, but I think that it's a good limitation to work around. So I'm not, I don't feel bothered by it. I think that everyone should be those are good challenges to have, is I think what I'm trying to say. So yeah, I wouldn't let it stop me. Again, core values are core values, as much as I was just like, let's go to Bali. And, I'd said like, okay, well, could we pay the women the same and make sure that they get maternity leave? And, it was a very different culture too, right? Where the factory is saying, that's not really, they probably won't want to do that. Certainly you could get paid the same. But then I just started thinking about like the shipping back and forth. And I was just like, okay, I'm wanting to help the developing world, but at what cost? So, it didn't add up for me. And I was like, you know what, we need to just keep it here, keep it lean, keep our impact low, and try and improve here where we can.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Thanks for that, Lily. Okay, I think we'll wrap up. Just wanted to say a big thanks to you for speaking us through your process and how you developed your brand. We're really happy to have some insight into all of this. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
We'll wrap it up here. Okay, so thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Have a good one. Good luck with everything.